Hello, guys. Welcome to Akash and Friends. This is yet another episode. This week we are now. So I was telling you all how I want to get everybody from what was once SNG. So we are currently we are on,
From the debris. The
yeah.
survivors.
So we are on that path, and now we have come to Kautuk. Now अभी बचा वरुण और करण. ठीक है, अभी उसमें से देखते हैं दोनों का किसका टाइम पहले मिलता है. I want to talk to everyone. And the best part is I don't even want to talk about SNG. I just want to talk about your lives and then leave it as a thing.
Correct.
For humanity. Look at, these were the 5 people who made a thing once.
Yeah.
And then it didn't happen. But this is not about that thing. This is just about them.
Yeah. And it's amazing how, like, like you were saying that you don't want to talk about SNG. It's amazing how no one does. So, not us, not people. It's just time has happened.
I personally care because I'm invested in all of these things. I don't know how to explain it because, it's how whenever a basketball player or a rapper or like somebody makes it, everyone around them is like, yeah, he made it and he's from my hood, and I feel like that about all comedians. Like whenever they make it, wherever they make it, whatever they make it as, I feel like ye apna ladka dekho, apna ladka. But hey man, thank you for doing this. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Pleasure.
This is a podcast about you. Okay. So yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is.
It really makes the decision to come on it much easier.
Yeah, but because I think it's what I realized midway through this, because we are doing 52 of them. If you do something 52 times, now you start having realizations,
Right.
like whether you want to or not. And one of the realizations I had is that it's like a meditation for me now. Right? Like it's doing the same thing over and over again with different people in different settings, but the same thing over and over again. It's just getting to know somebody very intrinsically as much as you can in the given time frame that you can. So like that way I'm very excited, because whenever we've had conversations, we've had excellent conversations.
Yeah,
but we never
that is
end
true.
But we never end up hanging out otherwise.
That is also true. And we never end up recording these conversations. So they're always great ideas that disappear with air. Like it's just fucking gone. And so it's good that this time we've at least got some documentation of and now today might be the day that we have a shit conversation. Who knows?
Who knows? Maybe we've been having shit conversations all along, and when we got record we realized, oh shit,
ये तो बहुत ही खराब था यार.
हाँ, इससे अच्छा तो फूक के टैक्सी में ही बात कर रहे थे. But we've had great conversations, man. Like the whole why liberals never win conversation. You remember that one? I remember that one distinctly. Or the time we sat and we talked about the Mumbai sky, construction scene while on the ceiling. I remember all these tiny moments.
Yeah. We've been, we've been bumping into each other for about 7 years, dude.
Yeah, that's a lot of time to keep bumping.
That's a long time. Yeah. Like 7 years is how much. It's a plausible amount of time in a rom-com for us to get married. You know what I mean? Like they just met for 7 years consistently and they got married. No one would be like, no, that's unrealistic. That's absolutely plausible.
No, I don't want to marry.
Like for sure, you're like brahmachari for life.
No. Who said anything? Hey,
oh, zyada ho gaya, okay. Just me. Okay, just me. You're rejecting. Cool.
Yeah, that is what I meant. The last time I hung out with you properly was when? Do you remember?
I think, was it the Indore gig? Was that the one?
Oh fuck yeah! It was the
college.
Indore
I think
gig.
that was what it was.
That was not bad at all.
That was a great gig.
Yeah.
And we hung out. It was a fun time.
Oh, college kids. I get so, I never thought I would be nostalgic about dumb college kids.
That's true. That's true. And dude, you know something? I did a corporate show recently and I cannot tell you how much of just gratefulness was seeping through me, because I was like, when you're like in the flow of it and all of that, then of course corporate shows are always good for like your bank balance and all that. But you look forward to the public shows more. But this time I was like, oh my God, I just cannot wait. You give me a microphone, you give me an audience. This is the biggest audience I've played to in months. This is great. and it was great. So
Are you still? Where are you living now? Are you still in Juhu, Andheri?
no, I'm in Jogeshwari now.
Oh,
I've gone from town to the burbs.
from Lower Parel to
So
Jogeshwari. You have settled
Lower
in कि
Parel
अभी तो स्क्रीन राइटर ही बनने का है. अभी.
no, I had to move out of my parents' house. There's no way I was living in Lower Parel on my own money.
That's
So when it came to my own money, I was like, hey, which is the seediest part of Bombay I can live in? And here I am. Anyone from Jogeshwari watching this, I love the place. It's not seedy at all.
Of course it is. Is it west or east?
It's east. It's east. It's closer to Powai than it is to anything else.
But then that's good. That's closer to home. That's closer to Thane, right?
Yes.
That, you know, I always wondered what it was like for people in Thane growing up, because, like, you know, talk about a younger brother of a city. You know, because Mumbai has such a big brother of a city vibe that even Pune is younger brother and Nasik is younger brother. And all, you know, so Thane to always gets overlooked. People assume Thane is a suburb, to which, you know, vehemently they are corrected by me by saying, "नहीं नहीं, उनसे तो रुपया भी लेते हम लोग शहर आने का."
Yeah, there is a toll booth. There is a proper toll booth, and I'll tell you what. That toll booth has been under construction. The road over there has been under construction for 9 years, dude. 9 years. You know, it takes you more time to get through that toll booth than it takes you to get to Thane. So
that's happened to me though.
Exactly, dude. The backspace shows. I mean, I don't know if you've done the backspace.
I have.
Oh my god, getting there. You have to plan your day.
My biggest thing is the bridge. There's this bridge you take, and then you have to take a turn on the bridge to get to backspace. And I always miss that turn on the bridge. And then I go under.
Yeah, from Surat, you're back.
What is it like growing up in Thane? Was it a quiet growing up? Like, how was it?
It was an interesting thing. So what happened was I used to live in Lower Parel. I was a proper Bombay kid, and I went to like St. Mary's ICSE. So Sahil Shah is the classmate. So we were in St. Mary's at the same time, the same standard. So I was there, and then my dad got
same age as Sahil.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a Sahil's, I guess, immaturity then.
Yeah. It's the childish behavior is literally why you think he's 16. So and then my dad got posted to Thane. So the whole family,
bank job, no?
No. He was running this company called JK Helen Curtis, which is the perfume, the Park Avenue.
Oh, okay.
The company that makes Park Avenue and stuff. So we moved there, and I moved in the most formative years, right? So from the 6th to the 10th, I was in Thane, right? Those are the hardcore puberty years, right?
Yeah.
So, so for me, it was very interesting because like there was a huge culture shift, because I moved from like this Catholic school, the St. Mary's High School, to Srimati Sulochana Devi Singhania School.
Wow.
I was doing yoga all of a sudden and shit. So it's crazy. And so for that reason, like it was like I felt that culture shift. I felt like a little bit of like, oh man, where am I? What is happening? All of that stuff. But eventually I got to know people, made friends, and then life got much easier. And life in Thane was, I would say, you know, the one image that sticks in my mind, okay, of the difference between Bombay and Thane. And this is, I'm talking about 2003 to 2006.
Yeah.
Okay. So this was even before now, well before how much progress is made now. So the image that sticks in my head is that Bombay was full of cars and Thane was full of two-wheelers.
Yeah.
So that kind of tells you what it was like what the town was like. It was kind of more of a town back then.
Yeah.
Like everyone got really excited with the malls coming in. It's like, oh, there's a mall. Like we gotta, how can we?
And a McDonald's.
It's a shop with ACs.
Yeah.
So it was nice. Like we had, you know, when I think of like these, you know what this reminds me of my time, at least in Thane. Like I used to walk to tuitions and shit like that, which you, unless your tuition is very close to your house.
But you know, interestingly, this is one of those things that most Mumbai kids don't have. But I was very lucky to have, because school was walking distance, tuition was walking distance.
Yeah.
Everything in my childhood was walking distance.
Yeah.
That's a nice feeling, man.
It's a nice feeling. It genuinely is. You feel this, how do I put it? There's a sense of it's like it had this very like homely, cozy vibe, which is very cool. Like it was very cool. Like you knew a lot of people, and everyone was like, it was a nice communities going on. It was fun.
Yeah. Did your
growing
mom
up in
also
Thane.
work?
No, she was a stay-at-home mom. So I had the most pampered, privileged childhood of all fucking time because
Plus only child, no?
I'm a guy. I'm a only child. Plus my mom was at home. Meaning I joke about this dude. Like life for me was like magic, where I used to take off my shirt, put it in a bucket, and then within 2 to 3 business days, it was back in my cupboard, freshly ironed. It's like, how is this happening? It's crazy. You know, it's like you're watching a Hollywood movie, and then when you live life, you're like, shit, now I know how the CGI works. This sucks. This is not... You have to put the clothes on a line.
Yeah. To wash them first.
You have to wash them. Fucking hell.
How old were you when you first used a washing machine?
It was
an embarrassing age, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a very embarrassing age. I mean, like...
But you know, it's interesting because the kids who are only kids and are pampered kids tend to not be the awkward kids because they get all this confidence. Right?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, I feel like if you have siblings, I think you also get more socialized because you're constantly interacting with. It depends on what kind of single kid childhood you had, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're if
you describe it as a very communal childhood, like in the sense that there were a lot of people around.
Correct. Like if you have siblings, you're constantly like talking, chatting, like they're louder, they know. Like this is a thing I've noticed. Okay, so my wife Siddhi, she had an elder brother, right? So she's amazing at arguments. She's very good at fighting. Why? Because she's had practice. She's literally had practice with an elder brother.
Yeah.
I didn't have that. So I don't know how to diffuse a fight. Like if there's a fight, then it stays until it just rots and dies on its own. So she's really good at it. And I envy that. So I think there is something to be said that if you have siblings, you just have more social interaction and you tend to be a little more if you're a only child and you're slightly introverted, you're into books and stuff, then you might have a serious social
and you were always into books and stuff.
I was always into books and stuff like that. I think I retreated further into the imagination. When I moved to Thane, I was like, oh, I'm not making friends here. So let me read books because I think that's at least I'm entertained, and it's like you don't have to change your behavior to adapt to it.
It's interesting because it feels like especially after reading Red Card, it feels like your childhood was books and football.
Yeah. Football, dude, football really changed my fucking life because it genuinely did. And I think like sports is people force kids to play sports for socializing, and it fucking works. It really does. Like there's no lie in that. It really, really helps. And I think like it fully changed my life because it helps you make, one other amazing thing about football is that it's a universal language, right? Sports is a universal language.
Yeah.
And you don't need to know anything else. So you can go to any part of the world, and if someone's playing football, you can just be like,
yeah.
And then you just
play. Not the same with cricket, unfortunately. Slightly more difficult with the sport of cricket. I have tried.
You have to have equipment.
Yeah, I mean, especially when they're already playing football and you bring a bat, they're like, why are you ruining this for us? I never understood football. I never got into it. My elder brother vanished through my formative years because he went abroad to study.
Oh, okay.
So
how much of a gap do you have?
7 years.
Oh, that's a long gap.
Yeah, and we are born on the same day.
Wow,
yeah. It's insane. It's very, very disturbing and
crazy.
Surprising.
Crazy, huh?
But I mean, I didn't have that. And mere school mein kaisa tha? There was nobody really watched. Like only the cool kids watch football. The rich cool kids watch football. Everybody else was a cricket person.
Correct.
So then it became like an ego thing. Ki like, oh, what is this? And then after a while, I realized it's not really a sport also.
Wow. Pray tell more.
I'm kidding. But did you play a lot of football or did you just watch a lot of football?
No, I fully played. So, and the reason I got into football was extremely shady. So the reason was that I had a crush on this girl in school.
Love it.
And she liked football.
So a lot. I'm seeing a lot of the book.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you think I have creativity? so, so because she liked football and Arsenal in particular, and this is the thing, right? When you're like 13, your brain works in the strangest way, and it's
worst way.
and yeah, and to your mind, it's the only way. So I'm like, if she likes football, I have to become a footballer. Otherwise, she'll never like me.
Yeah,
Right?
it's not like you can also like football and start a conversation. No.
Yeah. You can, or that. Hey, just because she happens, that's one part of her life, and you can, talk to her about anything else and be fine. But I was like, no, I must become a footballer.
Yeah. It's interesting because I have a feeling you would have tried becoming a football first if you had the option. Like your 13-year-old brain. She like football. I'm football.
I just need to put on some more. So I said, fuck it. This is the only way to impress her. I must do it. So I was till then I was a cricket fan for real, right? I was which is what sometimes surprises the boys at XNG. कि यार तेरे को थोड़ा कैसे आता है और फिर बाकी का नहीं आता है. Like
XNG. Yeah. So, your portion of cricket, I've noticed, it stops after a while. I'm assuming it's vice versa for football also. It just starts very randomly.
It starts, but then the thing about football that happened was I got into it because of this girl, but then eventually, like, it's like with any friendship, right? Like it starts randomly, but then it becomes a real part of your life, right?
Yeah.
So it was like that it started with this totally random reason, but now it's a significant part of my personality almost, you would say, and interest. Yeah. So, and then after that, obviously you start reading up on things on your own, and you're trying to, and so now I have like an understanding of football that's far deeper than my cricketing knowledge.
Yeah.
But it started with that. So it was a very strange fucking thing, and it I don't know if I was successful also, but I did play for my school team.
That's good enough. You played representational football.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. I went for like tournaments and I had a jersey with my name on it. So I think that was pretty good. That was pretty good.
What was it? I mean, I don't know. It was so weird to me. Like, kids falling in love with a club that's so far away. I mean,
100%.
But as you grow up, you realize you're falling in love with the narrative and the brand that they're kind of creating around them as well, right? You're falling in love with the story of the place. Or is it कि जो पहला club introduce किया वो प्यार हो जाता है? I think that's how most Manchester fans are made.
Yes. I've thought about this a lot, like how does this happen, right? So a lot of it comes down to who is successful at the time. Because very few people are going to be like, अच्छा तू 14th आता है तो मेरे को बहुत पसंद है. Like that's not going to happen.
That's how I would pick a team though. I would pick a team that's an underdog team.
I have noticed this about your personality in general. Like you're very contrarian and you're like, नहीं ये सब लोग कर रहे हैं, fuck off. So but I think it would be more interesting to do that, but it's also very predictable. It's predictable on both ends of the spectrum. कि अगर तो विनर भी पिक करेगा तो वही है और अगर तो लूजर भी पिक करेगा तो वही हो रहा है. So but I think a lot of it is down, like I'll tell you, I've analyzed my own following, right? So I follow a club called Real Madrid, which is from Spain.
It's very rich.
It's a very rich club, and the only reason I follow this club is because in 2003 David Beckham was at the peak of his popularity, and when I started getting into football, my parents didn't know it was because of a girl and all. They were like, "अरे ओ लड़का फुटबॉल में घुस रहा है, चलो ठीक है, encourage करते हैं." तो my dad got me his autobiography. तो मैं वो पढ़ा, तो मैं बोला, अरे ये तो बहुत ही सही है. Like ये अच्छा भी दिखता है, फुटबॉल भी खेलता है, ये तो बहुत ही यही है लाइफ में, यही चाहिए. तो I started supporting David Beckham, not even the fucking club he was playing for.
Yeah.
But then he moved from Manchester United to Real Madrid in 2003. And I felt one more layer of kinship, which was that in 2003, I moved from Bombay to Thane. So I was like, oh, it's the same. And he was also doing badly in Real Madrid. So I was like, So that's how I started. And then long after he left, I'm still with that club, because now it's again just like with football. Started with something, but now it's a completely different thing altogether.
Right. What did you study after school?
I did commerce. I did
Good
commerce.
decision.
Yeah.
Good. The 11th, 12th of the undecided.
It's fully that. It was for me, I call it not the undecided, because I knew what I wanted. It was the 11th, 12th of the compromise, because I knew I wanted arts, but my parents were like, you have penis, so you can't do arts.
Right,
but I was like, I can't do science either. So they were like, commerce.
Fair.
So because, and that's how the sexism works in education, right? कि like apparently अगर तू लड़का है तो तू कर ही नहीं सकता arts, कैसे करेगा तू? पागल है क्या?
Yeah, it's fair.
तो
I think it's a fair. No, I'll tell you why. If you were 16, 17 and you went to this school with all these girls everywhere,
right,
then you would sensitize.
And then how can you
propagate that toxic masculinity if they know that the women are also chill only? You know what I mean?
Correct.
You have to get them nice and hungry and depraved. That's how you get them to convert.
Yeah.
How do you think they made soldiers pehle, you know? All this gender segregation, and then leave them at the border. They go, and then attack anybody. I've realized that my perception of how humanity has come to here is often very mistaken. No, but I feel like, you know, okay, tell me what you think of this. Okay, this is a theme that I've been exploring for the last few episodes. I feel like it's the artist's job to take work done by academia and bring it to the masses. Right? That's our job. We are the bridge between science and popular culture. We have to learn the science and make it palatable for people in popular culture.
Yes and no. I mean, that's one part of it. I would argue, like it's one type of thing that we do, but my sort of analogy for it is that science is crops. Okay, it's the absolute sustenance of life, and that's how like things are. Right, commerce is fruits. Right, it's nice and it's like, you know, it's a fun thing and it costs money, and arts is alcohol. Okay, it contributes nothing to your life, but it makes life fun. And that's what it is. Like I think that, and dude, it is necessary, because after survival and propagation, there is only boredom. So कौन solve करेगा वो? हम लोग solve कर रहे हैं. So like I think that's a very valid and very useful job. Because and the thing is that it's classified as like the only problem with it is that it's very ephemeral, right? It's abhika, like you're only
stand-up specifically more so than anything else.
More so than anything else. Yeah, absolutely. It's the here and the now, and that's all you can comment on. Right?
Yeah,
and that's all you can, like, if you look at the movies from the 80s, right? You go like, what the fuck was going on? Right? How are you making this? And who was watching it? Right? But it was being watched and it was being enjoyed, and it was being like, it was making an effect on people's minds and shit. So but that's the only thing that you know, it's difficult to be to entertain people across time. Some people obviously do it; those are rare exceptions. But you're solving boredom in the present, which is great, which is amazing. It's a gift.
I completely agree with you. I feel like the fun is I'm very inspired in that sense by musicians and what they do, because like, you know, Pink Floyd's music has as much technology to attribute to its making than it has artists. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it does. It fully does.
There is no Dark Side of the Moon without an engineer like Alan Parsons sitting behind the desk, even if you don't give him credit. So you know, I feel like that's one thing where I feel like I take great joy. कि ऐसा science अब खुद को एकदम ऐसा पढ़ो, बहुत सारा सीखो, और फिर उसको dumb down करके just and bring it out. Yeah, I mean, and I mean dumb down in a very respectable manner.
Yeah. No, correct, to make it accessible.
Yeah,
right.
Because I don't expect anybody to understand things, like not just anything. How can we understand anything?
You know something, this is one thing I've been thinking of a lot, which is that, and this ties into what you've been saying, which is that I think one thing that art can do is it makes things sexy. Right? So, and that's the primary, motivator for people to do stuff, right? It's
Yeah.
if you want to motivate someone to do something, you got to make it sexy. Like a lot of the conversation around global warming right now is not sexy. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, although like when you listen to this, you can be extremely dismissive of this and say, listen, it's a matter of life and death. What does it matter if it's sexy or not? Unfortunately, it does.
It does. Yeah.
Because, you look at Doordarshan, okay? That's unsexy as fuck, right? And if you listen to the news on Doordarshan, after 2 minutes, it wouldn't even get into your brain. Although it's important to you. It's making a difference to your life, but you're like, I can't listen to this.
Yeah.
On the other end of the spectrum is obviously all your Times Now and Republics and shit who made it too sexy. So you need an optimum sexiness for ideas to get communicated. I agree with you. Like you gotta, the amount of theses that are written on dead trees and get read by nobody is phenomenal. So if anyone can, make it accessible to people, that's also a very worthy thing to do.
No, higher concepts though, I think it's impossible us to expect people to know everything anymore. Like,
yeah, for sure.
Whenever people, like, it's like with it's with any of the conversations. Anytime somebody says hegemony,
yeah,
I say, एक second. तो पहले मेरे को gravity define करके दे. And the thing, it's a fun activity. Can you define gravity?
I can't. I'll tell you right now. I really can't.
Everybody around me,
coherently or in any.
I ask people all the time, and they very confidently, it's a force of pulls everything down to the earth, and they'll be very confident about it, but they have no fucking clue. And I say, if something that integral to how life in this universe began, to how this universe began, is something that is beyond your understanding, but it still, seems to exist every day. Maybe that's why I don't know what your thoughts on, feminism as an idea is far more complex to disseminate as compared to gravity. For example, तो अगर मैं gravity अगर तेरे को definition नहीं याद है, तो feminism जैसा concept थोड़ा और time लगने वाला है.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And I think but it also comes down to like what people are interested in and then how their comprehension increases. Like,
would it be sexist to make feminism sexy? I don't know why.
I think you should make everything sexy. I don't think sexy is a derogatory thing at all. I think you should make everything sexy for sure. Because that's the only way. Unfortunately, we've reached this point where there's this crazy book, okay? It's called Amusing Ourselves to Death. Okay, it's by Neil Postman, I think. So he argues about how, then this is written in the 80s, okay? In the 80s, he was talking about how TV was destroying culture. And he talks about how back in the day, the presidential debates and things in America, they used to be long speeches. Abraham Lincoln ऐसा 3 घंटे का show करता था. And he used to discuss ideas and exactly what you want democracy to be, right?
Yeah.
He's going to people and telling them his policies. He said that doesn't work anymore because now you want sound bites. Right?
Yeah.
You got to have make America great again and that's it. Like 4 words and it's perfect. So there is a attention span that's going down. There is a want for entertainment over
facts.
Not just facts, but over substance. Right? You don't even have to have substance anymore. You don't have to have an idea. You just have to make it
loud and
interesting.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. You could argue that 2 of the most successful TV shows in the last decade. One would say
Bigg Boss.
You could say Breaking Bad was amazing.
Okay.
And at the same time, Keeping Up with the Kardashians was also that popular.
Yeah.
So one has substance and all of that shit, and then the other is just that it's entertaining. That's all it is. So, but it's as popular.
What college does one go to get such anti-national thoughts, Kautuk? What degree college?
I went to no. So after I did commerce, I started like sliding down into arts. I was like, I gotta disappoint my parents slowly. So then I did BMM from Ruya College, and yes, I was in 3 years in Matunga.
And your Marathi still did not improve.
That's the thing, dude. मेरे को मैं ऐसा वो, how do I put it? Spy बन के गया था, dude. No, but I enjoyed my time in Ruya Road. बहुत मजा आया मेरे को. I was, do you know this? This is a lesser known fact that I was Mr. Ruya 2009. It is true.
Wait, you are how old are you?
I am 29.
You're 2 years ahead of me.
I think so.
How would you be in Ruya in 2009? I finished 10th standard and went to 11th standard. You were Mr. Ruya in first year.
Yeah.
Wow.
In first year.
Oh,
spending off those third years. Yeah. No, I fucking won a competition, dude. I just like, I don't know how. I was on a stage and they were like, you are Mr. Ruya. Like, okay.
Was it weird going on stage as a shy person? Were you ever averse to it?
No, surprisingly, I think I have that classic thing that a lot of people have where I can talk to crowds, but I can't talk to people.
I know what you mean.
You know,
I know that feel.
It's like the crowd is a faceless entity, right? It doesn't have individual
there's something
feelings
between you and them. They're all facing us, man. They're not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think that's one other single child thing. I don't know. I'm doing amateur psychology at this point, but I feel like
now you're getting this show.
Yeah, this show should have been called Amateur Psychology.
No, I needed my name in it.
So, Amateur Psychology with Akash and friends. So I feel like that way single child, you want more and more attention. Because I think like your parents give you some amount of attention, but then you're like, that's all the attention I'm getting. So I'd like more. And at least I have that attention seeking nature.
Yeah.
And I feel like at some point, if you're a comedian, there's no getting away from the fact that you want attention. You seriously want attention.
I disagree with this strongly. Every comedian who comes through here tells me this. I'm going to become defensive also for this. And I disagree. I hate it. Only time I like the attention is when I'm on stage and I'm telling the jokes. After that, it's not nice anymore.
No, even I don't like it after that. But the very fact that you're getting on stage and you want people's approval, like a joke is literally like, ye mera thought hai, and I want a reaction from you.
But it's not like for me, the trip is I want this specific reaction from you.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. So you still want trip. You want a reaction, and it's a sense of exactly, right? It's a sense of power. It's a sense of like you are seeking approval whether you like it or not from these people, from people, right? From all audiences. That's what you're doing. Like if they rejected you, which is what not laughing is, you'd feel fucking terrible after the show. You'd be like, I don't want it. That felt. So I think
very differently about all of these things.
I feel like at some level there's something wrong with you if every night you want to be in front of strangers and
and say just the most dark shit about your life.
Yeah. Just exposing yourself to strangers, just like some fucking creepy exhibitionist. So like it's you're an emotional exhibitionist. That's what you are.
Yeah.
Okay, if you are.
That is, somebody has said that about me before in a very different context.
Yeah.
And the fact that you bring it up again makes it eerily ring out as true now.
I'll tell you something. So just the other day, and comedians say this a lot, not just the other day. So I will put a specific date. Yesterday. Yesterday I was in a writer's room, and so we have a couple of comics.
I'm so glad you have work right now, man.
I'm also, by the way, I've taken up more work than I can do just because pandemic चल रहा है, पता नहीं कब काम मिलेगा. तो सब
मेरे को थोड़ा ऐसा साइफन करके कम पैसे में किसी और से करवाना है तो मैं कर लूंगा.
बाप चल, I will.
So मैं भी तीसरे राइटर को ही दूंगा, पर
I love how our podcasts usually are 80% of stuff that everyone can understand and 20% of WhatsApp conversations.
Yeah.
So yesterday, 3 comics and some of these production people, right? And we're trying to explain an idea to a third person.
Right.
So a comic is explaining it, and हम वही explanation के बाद एक tag joke. Right, so you're joking around and you're fucking doing it. And the production guy looks at me, okay, and very quietly goes like, "Can you please tell him to stop joking? Why can't you guys just do a presentation like a presentation?" And I'm like, that's a great question, and that's a fundamental difference, because we're like, listen, there are 8 other people listening to this call. That's an open mic.
I
So
see what you mean. I get you. I
if
get
there
you.
are people, I'm going to, which is why if you want to get like interesting thoughts from a comic, catch them when they're alone.
Yeah.
Then they'll really tell you interesting. Otherwise, they're just performing like fucking chutiyas. It's like,
This is
ye
why I
dekh mein
don't let
funny."
anybody come in doubles on this podcast.
है ना? It
Yeah.
becomes a sparring fight, no? Sparring match.
Yeah. It becomes a dick measuring contest.
Always.
Very quickly. But वही है, मतलब मैं कभी अपने आप को ज्यादा इसमें participate करते हुए feel नहीं किया है, because I feel like when it's that green room spitfire contest, so I'd rather sit at the back.
Yeah.
Because I'm not that fast in terms of coming up with stuff like that.
I fully agree. Like, and there is, I really envy comics who have a security in their comedy, like a security of a level that I know I'm funny. I don't have to prove it to you all the time. I don't have this this thing where अगर मैं 2 मिनट में हर 2 मिनट में जोक नहीं बोला तो मैं कॉमेडियन ही नहीं है. Like I envy people like that. I wish I could be that guy, but I feel like even I have this insecurity where I'm like कि नहीं जोक तो बोलना पड़ेगा. So oftentimes it's not good, but you do.
You know, man, I think it's turned out pretty well. You're fine only. You know, there are many.
No, those green room jokes, dude. Those green room.
Those. You know, it's okay. You know,
Yeah.
I was talking to Karan Chauhan. I don't know if you know Karan
Yeah.
Chauhan. Magician.
Yeah, I know. Of course, dude.
Great guy. I love that guy.
We've had some hilarious gigs together, dude. Karan Chauhan. I'll tell
Same.
you about it.
It's like
Yeah.
always a fun time. Now, once I was asking him, Karan, what do magicians do when they meet each other?
Right.
And he said, कुछ नहीं, हम लोग एक बकरा पकड़ते हैं सिविलियन और उसको सब लोग बैठ के ट्रिक दिखाते हैं. And I was like, at least we're not magicians.
Nah, fuck, thank God. Yes.
You know,
Yes. Yes.
dastardly magicians catching somebody off the street and making them watch magic that delights them.
Yeah. You know something else, dude? अगर तेरे पास time है ना, तो ये Netflix पे there is a show called Penn and Teller, Fool Us.
Oh, I love that show.
Right?
I love that show. It's a
Now-
great show.
Exactly. And now the thing that I'm fucking again jealous of these fucking magicians is ये लोग
magicians.
एक दूसरे का ट्रिक करते रहते हैं.
हाँ, और थोड़ा मॉडिफाई कर दिया तो चलता है. थोड़ा सा
चलता
Did
है.
you do a donut with a flambego? And he's like, yeah, hey, मैंने वही किया. Hey, what is this?
Exactly, dude. I mean, like there is no वही है ना कि magic में there is no sense of originality or anything. There is just I have to make these people laugh. तो मैं किसी का भी trick करके कर
In
दूंगा.
fact, no, but you know, in fact, I think that with magicians, because and I've said this before, I'll say it again. Magicians are basically dumb comedians. Okay? Because what happens is, no, I'll tell you why. Because they need objects to execute what we do with words. Okay, this is my theory. Now, the magicians, when you steal a trick, you're stealing something that can easily be identified, patented, observed, object hai, movement hai, design.
Right.
With words and concepts, it's way harder to do.
Absolutely.
That's why comedians actually have a way stricter and way more cut out sense of what is yours, what is not yours, what can be taken, what cannot be taken, what should be original, etc.
Yeah.
But the jokes that they take are always stolen gandagi mein. And comedians can't do that differentiation because 15 people can do a bread joke and everybody's bread joke is going to be different if they're
Correct.
proper, decent comedians.
Correct. No, and also, but you know but this is what I'm saying. Like, I'm so jealous of that fucking art form because you can borrow other people's, bits almost or whatever the acts, and you can do them. That's one. Secondly, no matter how many times you do it,
It's
people
still
will love
amazing.
it. The same trick. If you do it to me 20 times, each of those 20 times I'll be amazed.
I know, right?
Each of those 20 times.
But I'll tell you the trick, Kautuk.
Huh.
The trick is don't remember your jokes. I do this every time I'm telling you. Just go on stage and have a rough idea of why you're there.
Yeah.
And just be like, okay, what?
Jazz music.
What are we talking about now? What is the show called? Okay, it's the dark show. So, titty fucking dead people, huh? Like just
on this podcast, okay, so far, football is not a sport. Magicians are dumb comedians, and titty fucking a dead corpse. So far,
it's very difficult to titty fuck a living corpse because they are zombies, Kautuk.
That's true. That is true. A living corpse you should stay away from. I agree with that thought.
Okay. On that note, we're going to take a quick break. And on the other side, we're going to talk seriously, okay, about screenwriting and
great.
about stand-up and about the special. In fact, I spoke to Neville about Kautuk special. And in the second half, I'm going to ask Kautuk about Kautuk special because that's how much I cared about that special. So we'll catch you right after this. You're listening to Akash and Friends with Kautuk Srivastav and me, Akash. Hello. Welcome back. Second half, Akash and Friends podcast with Kautuk. This has been such a jovial episode. So far, last few episodes have been very intense. So I'm glad because so far there are no major dead relatives to cover. No.
Yeah, not yet. Not yet. We will get there. I think we should end on that for sure, so that we don't disappoint your listeners.
Yeah, a little bit death, just to remind you. Where do we pick this up? So you went to Ruia, and you did BMM at Ruia. And what is the job that one gets when one is a 2012 batch graduate from Ruia College in BMM, a degree that had just then come out?
It hadn't been too long since BMM was around. It was less than a decade for sure. So generally, I mean, the jobs you get are in the media field in some capacity, like mostly in advertising and journalism, because those are the two majors that you get to pick. Right. The thing that I had done though was that in my first year itself, I had started interning at Weird Ass, which is Veer Das's comedy collective. So I started going down that path, and by the time I left Ruia, I had already gotten a job with MTV. So I was writing with MTV at the time. So, and right after that, I had a...
And this was mainly what were you writing for them?
So I started off as a digital intern. So digital editorial intern. So they had MTV back then had a digital editorial team, which used to put out all the tweets and Facebook posts, and social media just sort of like happened, right? So people were, so there was a nice team over there that was doing that kind of stuff. So I joined there as an intern. I used to do time pass over there and did like some funny stuff and and all that. And then over there I met, who else was there? There was a guy called Nikhil Taneja. Okay. I'm sure like Nikhil Taneja is the kind of guy who everyone knows. Okay, but they don't know exactly who he is and what he does, but they're like, Nikhil Taneja, of course.
I know exactly how I know Nikhil Taneja. I have not met him personally, but I know of him and I know he does things and he's mentioned often.
Correct. So Nikhil Taneja and I, we were working there, and he had an idea for a sitcom. Okay, called Reality Stars. And at that point in time, MTV was looking for shows from within the internal team. So we wrote a scene, we got it shot, we put together this idea of what it was, and we pitched it. And lo and behold, the only thing that got picked was Reality Stars.
Oh man. Okay.
So at 21, I was writing this sitcom fucking randomly. And it turned out to be an incredible experience for me. The show, however, 4 people have seen it, and even those 4 didn't like it. So, so it was incredible, but it was a great opportunity, and like that happened. And then from there, I just kept doing like writing gigs or comedy, and then kept finding my way through that thing.
Did comedy happen as a conscious decision, or was it accidental?
No, it was it like I got introduced to it as an accident, and then like I took a conscious decision to do it. So what happened is that remember in 2009 or 2007 when YouTube was like it was like a crazy new thing. Like
I could only start watching YouTube from 2009 because internet was not with me for those first years.
Yeah. So 2007 it was like a very like random wild west thing, and on the internet I've discovered Robin Williams on YouTube. Someone had uploaded his entire special there.
Weapons of Self-Destruction was on YouTube.
Not Weapons. Before that, live at Broadway.
Yeah.
So, and it was a fucking incredible special, dude. My whole special, my life change ho gaya. Like I saw it and I was like, oh my god, this is the capability of just one man and a mic.
Yeah.
Right. This is all that is possible. The whole range of stuff that you can do. So I was like, and at the time I wanted to be a humor writer, but I knew even then somehow very, I think it's very obvious to people at all times in life that there is no money in writing books. I think you can tell that from afar. Okay, this
Yeah.
is poverty straight up
Yeah.
this road. So I was like, I like to write funny stuff, and books are a very tough thing to crack. But this seems like a lot of fun. At the time, the Bombay had just started doing open mics. This is 2009-10. So
Yeah.
there was like
Bombay,
Cafe Goa,
Culture Shock.
and Culture Shock,
Yeah.
Crack Me
When
Up. And
back
stuff.
then it was called Bombay Electric Company. No?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I started signing up for these things, and back then it used to happen once a week.
Once a month.
No, once a month. You're right.
Yeah.
Sorry, once a month.
All until 2011 when 12 when I started doing.
Right.
It was 2012 by then, and it was still only once a month. In fact, I did the last Cafe Goa gig.
Oh, you did the last Cafe Goa one?
Yeah, the
Oh,
Train Ka Dibba
fuck.
Cafe Goa,
Crazy, huh?
which is now.
I know
Eddie's.
which one you're talking about. Not the one in Bandra. The other. I mean, not the one
Chuttu
where.
Yeah.
Yeah. I performed there once. And anyway.
Yeah, same. Yeah, once, and then it shut.
And then it shut. I think we must have done the same show. So anyway, so open mics started happening. I started doing it, and I was like, you know what, this is fun. Because the other good thing about stand-up, which is very different from all the other mediums, is this. One, it's very different from writing for TV or whatever, because you are in complete control.
Yeah.
Right? So you write, you perform, you execute, you bear the brunt of whether it was good or bad or whatever.
Yeah.
That's one. Secondly, different from books because it's immediate. So the weird thing about books is you spend 6 years of your life writing it. It takes a year for it to come out. It takes 3-4 years sometimes before you it takes a year for them to put it out, and then 3-4 years later it might make some kind of impact, because that's how long it takes people to read books and then for it to get passed on and so on and so forth. So by the time you get feedback, it's like you're a different person from when you began writing that book. So it's such a long process. But with stand up, it's like आज दोपहर को मैंने ये जोक लिखा और आज शाम को मेरे को पता चल गया कि जोक अच्छा था नहीं था क्या था. And it's so immediate and so beautiful. So I started getting into it, and then I quit because I was with MTV writing intensely for 2 years, and then I came back to stand up in 2013, end of 2013, and it was like a it felt the minute you get back on stage, you're like, why the fuck did I ever leave it? I don't think you can ever replicate that sort of like energy or that experience anywhere else.
Yeah. It's just interesting to me, because you're like, the other comedians who, like Punit is also somebody who's a writer predominantly who does stand up.
Yeah.
And you see it in the stand up very much so. With yours, it's not nearly as much that way. Like it doesn't feel as you know what I mean, right? Like it's a delivery thing.
Yeah.
And while your stand up is predominantly, like I would say, it comes from a very self-exploratory kind of space where it's like you're exploring the condition, the version of the human condition that you're going through right now.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. Yeah.
I feel like it came to a height with the Anatomy of Awkward, because I got to see that special in different ways.
Yeah.
I got to see it as bits. I got to see it as a whole hour when you were trying it once, I think at Cat Cafe.
Yeah.
And then I got to see it being taped. And I was not happy with the way it turned out.
Why?
Because it so much better when it was just you standing on stage and telling me the jokes without a PPT doing the opening act.
Yeah, but that didn't make it to the cut. And that was a very conscious thing. When you see the show, you realize there's a lot of changes in it. And, yeah.
What was the thought process there? Because I felt like I asked Neville also. I mean, I didn't get into it with Neville because I felt like it's your special, so you are answerable.
By the way, he asked Neville because Neville directed it. It's not like you can like.
They watched
just
it,
a random person. Yeah,
they watched the Neville episode already. Okay. It's okay. You guys go watch it. But like, so the reason because it was great. right? And then I think what happened is that when we were shooting it, most people don't realize that when you're shooting stand up, like how much stand up has to do with context and how
Yeah.
much difference it makes that there's a crew in the room
Yeah.
and the shape of the room and the size of the room and all of those things just started. I felt like it kind of piled up against you while you were doing the show.
No, I would disagree. I think like for me, I think I did my two best shows on the days it mattered most.
Mhm.
Like when the cameras were rolling, I think I did my two best shows of that special. The decision to make it look the way it did was very conscious, and the reason was that I was like, this is a visual medium, and stand up is a live art form, and at the time when I was watching stand-up specials, I was extremely bored of the fact that it's just the same background, same thing, same thing, same thing, same thing. And I was like, listen, if you have the opportunity and someone is giving you the budget to do it, right, you might as well do something interesting.
Yeah.
And I thought it was like what we did was, for those of you who haven't seen the special, I had four big stories in it, like four big chunks, and each of them was represented like we had a background change for every
For each
story.
one. Yeah.
And it was just represented very symbolically, often or sometimes literally in the background. And like I had this one story about a drunk person at Wagah border, and I loved that set design because they just put this bottle of rum
Yeah.
with a barbed wire fence around it. It was beautiful. That was the perfect suggestion.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I thought it was I really liked the ideas that we came up with. I thought the set design was pretty good, and I thought it was interesting to do something because and here's the other thing, right? If I was just doing a bunch of bits, then it would make no sense because then you're just jumping from one thing to another every 5 minutes,
Yeah,
and then you
yeah.
can't keep fucking doing comical shit at the back. But because there were these big stories, I was like, you know what? These are like almost, I would classify them as act breaks in a play.
Right.
So like how you would have like a small set design thing in a play, that's how I wanted to like kind of do it, because it's also a visual medium when you're watching a special online. It's not a live medium, so that sort of like it would add a little freshness to the thing. And I think I liked the special. I'm very proud of it, and I think like I did my two best shows during that thing. Now the thing is, if you didn't like it, then those were the two best shows.
No, but here's the thing. I think this is what happens with me and a lot of my friends who are artists. I see the work at a certain part of the progress, and then I kind of fixate on that version.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, this is great, but this is not that. And I think that's where the
That
gap
is-
is.
That is so true. That is also like, you know, it's like when you go to a restaurant, okay, and sometimes you catch a moment and like your appetite meets the mood and the dish
taste.
that comes in.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
exactly that, right?
Yeah.
And then you go back to the restaurant going like, fuck, I remember that time. And then something has changed, right? The weather is not the same outside. You're not feeling as hungry.
Yeah.
The chef didn't have a good day. And then the food is not exactly the same. And then you're like, "Arey, yeah, right, yeah." Could be that. But
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I think it's faithfully come out the way I wanted it. So I'm pretty happy with it.
What do you feel the next special is going to be?
So that's what I'm doing right now. So I'm doing this thing called Working on the Vaccine. That's the new name of the special. And the whole point was this. And when I was telling Puneet this, he was like, "Ye kya LinkedIn ka tu apna post chhap raha hai idhar?" So I'll tell you what I mean. So it's got a very sort of like a sappy-ish thing behind it. But the idea was that why is it working on the vaccine? And the reason is, at the beginning of the pandemic, I really fucking deliberated. One is that it was obviously world changing and world stopping. And it's a fucking pandemic where people are affected. Like genuinely people are affected. And it makes you really question that part of our job, right? Like the purpose of it.
Yeah, why are we even here when
There's clearly bigger things happening in the world, right? And in the beginning of the pandemic, there's nothing I could think of and there's nothing other people could think of that was not pandemic related. And it felt like, the whole comedy thing was very superficial and all of that stuff. And I felt like, yeah, if you're joking about it, there's also people who were seriously affected by it.
Yeah.
And they are going to watch you. And it's like watching, while you're starving, it's like
Somebody
watching rich people
yeah.
stuff their face with food. It's like, I want to see that. So it felt like that a little bit. And then over the months, as things started kind of like coming under control a little bit, that's when I was like, okay, I think now we can talk about this, and we can. I think now is the time when people are genuinely bored and want to move on, and
Yeah.
now we step in again, thankfully.
Yeah.
So, and the whole idea was that, right? I cannot contribute to the situation at all except with jokes. That's all I
Yeah.
can do. This is it. This is all my contribution is. So if you want me to work on the vaccine, this is my version of it. Right? Like,
Yeah.
and the whole thing is that if laughter is the best medicine, then Kautuk is working on the vaccine.
I love it. That's a great idea, dude.
Yeah.
I have done nothing of the sort in this quarantine. I wrote 1 hour which was about my building.
Yeah. The way you said it, I'm laughing completely at the way you said it because you just seem so dejected.
I had no
It's
choice.
about my building.
I had no choice. There is a 5-minute bit on crows versus pigeons versus kites versus rats.
Nice.
There is a bit
I want to see the movie.
But it was that's the thing, right? Like I was like, oh, I cannot tell jokes now. What?
Yeah.
I can't, because I can't do Nasty on Zoom. Nasty is a show that does not translate to Zoom.
It doesn't translate, and I bet you don't want it filmed.
No, वो तो ठीक है, मतलब
in secrecy.
नहीं वो तो अभी हो गया, वो वाले shows तो करता ही नहीं हूँ मैं ऑनलाइन, वो वाले jokes तो करता ही नहीं हूँ. And you know, with the other shows I still do the shows on Zoom, but I felt like I should write 1 hour which is just about what's going on and what I've learned about human nature during this pandemic, you know. And then I was like, will I ever do this live? Do I even want to tell these jokes live? Like, do they make sense live and all of that? So then I was like, what do I do to fill the time? So what I did is I took all these old jokes I had, which is my advantage in life, by the way, because I didn't get very famous very quickly. So I have all these jokes lying around.
Yeah.
That didn't get released as a special or didn't get used anywhere. So I just kind of recompiled and I made 1 hour. And now the plan is to shoot that 1 hour as 6 stand-up videos.
Right.
And it's just one story. And this is, by the way, something I learned from you, because I remember when you were working on Anatomy, this was 2018, 17?
Yeah, 17 I was working on it, 18 we filmed.
So when you were doing it in 17, I was working on Bear With Me.
Right. Yes.
Which was one story over the 90 minutes.
Correct.
And it's because you knew this much about story structure that I got some inkling of what to do with my special.
Oh wow. Huh.
Yeah, because I saw yours and I was like, oh fuck, ऐसे करने का रहता है. Oh, ये तो कितना मस्त कर दिया इसने. Yeah, it's really that. It's so much of my stand-up career is just watching people going,
oh yeah.
Let me get my notebook.
And that's fucking true, dude. Because this is a thing that someone, I forget where I'd heard this advice, but it was basically this: that what you want to do art, consume it.
Yeah,
consume all of it.
Yeah,
consume as much as you can, because here's the good thing: people have probably solved the problem you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Right, and you just have to fucking be like, oh, that's how you do it. तेरे को pilot लिखना है तो pilots देख. Right?
Yeah.
How to introduce characters? कोई कर दिया है solve. किसी ने 6 महीना लगा के सोच के कर दिया है. अभी तू copy कर, चुतिया copy कर, चल.
And see, you were saying magicians can copy and comedians cannot, but I have learned. How did you learn about writing? How did the whole screen, like, because I know, like, eventually your career, if we plot it, right? Apart from the stand-up, like the one thing that comes to mind is Sumit Sambhal Lega.
Yeah.
Is Shaitan Haveli. You know, these are things that you've written also. Sumit Sambhal Lega also you wrote, right? Yeah. So Sumit Sambhal Lega was sort of like a loose remake of
No, not loose at all. Not loose at all.
Not loose at all.
Not loose at all. It was the official remake of it.
Oh.
The rights had been bought, and it was great because they got the actual writer, one of the writers and producers of Everybody Loves Raymond, to India to like kind of like take us through it. So it was great. It was like a proper. So you know something, when the show came out, I posted this thing on Facebook saying ki this is crazy. It was a really good experience.
Yeah.
Glad the show is coming out. Go watch. Ye dala tha main. So the creator of Everybody Loves Raymond found that post and he was like, hey, you guys did a great job. And I was like, screenshot. Phil Rosenthal said I did a great job. Cool.
Was there because I mean, you know, you're talking about how comedy gives you that immediate feedback and control, and television is even less control and even less immediate feedback.
Yeah.
So how do you settle for that? How do you find a balance there? Does it not frustrate? Like that's one thing that annoys the fuck out of me about these things.
It does frustrate you a little bit as a writer. I mean, if it didn't, then you've really caved into the system.
Yeah.
There's no part of your individuality left. But at the same time, here's the great thing about television, right? And especially now with web series more than with like traditional TV. But you're never going to get to play with, at least at my level, you're not going to get to play with the budgets that TV does on your own thing, right? Like it's operating on a totally different level, and that's one of the reasons why you don't have control. Because when that much money is involved, people are like, no, we gotta contain our risk. Like tera ye sab, the ideas with the titty fucking the cops we should avoid. So
Wait, did you say cops or corpse?
Corpse.
Oh, okay,
Corpse.
Cool. So the cop idea is still on the table then.
Yeah. If you want to titty fuck the cops, then go ahead. So but I mean, like, so the level of budgets is insane. The way that they put together a thing and the reach it has is incredible, and it's enjoyable because I guess some part of me also enjoys collaborative work. And I think it's also great to do that in juxtaposition with writing books. Because when you're writing a book, you're just in, solitary confinement, jo kehte hain na, like just to ek jail cell mein khud se baat karke, you're writing.
But was Red Card really that long and that lonely a process?
It was, because Red Card was one of the main ways for me to learn how to write. So I learned how to write purely by writing a lot. That's the only way I learned how to write.
But isn't that the...
It's surprising how people don't think of that as one of the options. Like,
I was talking to a friend of mine recently about this. A friend of mine who is a literary major.
Okay?
English major. And she has passed out and all, and she writes now. And she writes infrequently and for her own benefit.
Yeah.
Occasionally you'll read something. And I'm like, bro, it's by default better than what most people are writing. Right. And it's not because somebody told you how to write. Yeah. You just spent 3 years reading all the best people in the world.
Right.
And understanding what they were talking about and the tools that they were using. It's not... it's like with the comedy workshop as well. I'm not telling you how to write a joke. That's what you'll figure out. But I'm telling you, these are the language tools and the conceptual tools that you can use with it. And then the only way to really learn how to write a joke is to write a joke. Or with a pilot, is the best way to write a pilot is to learn how to write a pilot is to write a pilot. I don't
absolutely
see, right?
Absolutely. That's the thing. So I with Red Card, and here's the cool thing about it. Okay, when I started writing the book for the first time, thankfully I knew that I was a shit writer. So I knew this, and I was like, I can't even pretend to be a good writer. That's how bad I am. So the first draft of Red Card was written. And I said, okay, then I have to come up with a device that justifies the bad writing. Okay, so what is the device? The device is going to be that it's a person verbally telling the story to another person.
Yeah.
In which case, the syntax can be bad, grammar can be bad.
Yeah.
Kuch bhi ho raha hai, right? So, you have past, present, active voice, passive voice. Who gives a fuck? It's a narration, right? It's not a formalized thing. So I did that. That was a full first draft. Right? So, मैंने 300 पेज ऐसा लिखा, right? Garbage, hot garbage. Right? Then the second draft was, all right, okay, now I know how to do this. And in between, I was writing full drafts of travelogues also, like full book length things. So I was getting better and better at writing. And then, so the second draft was a big tweak on it. I was like, okay, let me write it slightly more formally. And by the third draft, I was like, I have a full grasp of what I'm trying to achieve. And I will do it in so it's written in like a third person omnipresent sort of style. So the thing about it is that, and the reason it took so long is because I wasn't a full-time writer, and I'm still not a full-time novelist.
Yeah,
I'm a full-time comedian and all of that. But along with it, I was doing comedy. Along with it, I was doing Sumit Samalega. Along with it, I was doing, so every year I was doing some TV show and one stand-up thing, and then one this. So which is why it took so long, and it's a full marathon, dude. Full marathon. Like you have to for 6 months straight get up in the morning. First thing you do right after brushing your teeth is sit down and write. And you have to hit your fucking numbers. You have to be like, this day I'm going to hit like 500 words, and then you fucking hit those 500 words. And that's how you write. That's how you finish a book. That's not how you write a book, but that's how you finish it. And at some point you will always feel like I can do one more pass. एक और लिखता हूँ, थोड़ा और, right? And I stopped doing this when someone told me this line. It's a beautiful line. They said that good art is never finished; it's abandoned. you just gotta go like, "अरे छोड़ अभी बस हो गया, hit publish."
Yeah.
So that's it, man. You just gotta then hope for the best. And I thought that this can keep going on.
And with screenwriting, obviously, it's a very different process where there is a way more stricter timeline.
Yeah.
And obviously because it's so collaborative, you are working with so many other people's schedules and because I feel like with any kind of work, you need to turn yourself on and off. But with stand-up, you're always in a middle space. Like you're always kind of on and you're always kind of off. Your brain is always observed. But like with this job, you have to show up. When it's a writing, you have to show up to that room, and for 6 hours a day, you have to be on.
Yeah, you have to be.
You don't have that choice. And I find that very daunting as a...
It is extremely daunting. And there's a couple of things about this. The first one being that the muse is incredibly overrated.
Right.
Inspiration is incredibly overrated.
Incredibly.
I don't think it's a criteria at all. Like होता है तो सही है.
Inspiration is when you're fucking, I don't know, Mozart or some shit. Like for the average dude, it's like, bro, dekh. मेरे को बनाने गए. Okay.
No, and I would say that inspiration comes to everybody, but the conditions for it are that you have to start work.
Yeah, and you have to be, your craft has to be on point to actually convert that inspiration into something usable.
Yeah, and
otherwise you're making sparks over wet grass, it's not going to catch a fire.
And the thing is that people wait, and this is, ये एक और चीज है जो, this is a PR problem that artists have. It's a purely PR problem, okay? The PR problem is that the image of the artist is a person that as a lightning strikes and then ideas sparkle and then you write this gorgeous line, right? But that's not true. That's not true at all. If you want to be a professional artist, that's incredible that you can. Just imagine if your plumber came to your house and said ki nahi yaar, aaj I'm not feeling the inspiration to do your valve. You'd be like, get the fuck out of my house. I can't pay you because you're unemployable, right? So
but I feel like, it's not... here's what I've noticed. I completely agree with you, but I feel like the temperamental nature of what comes along with being an artist is something that I have consciously adopted in certain capacities. Like I'm okay with being temperamental with certain things now because I know I can get away with it because I am artist, because they're going to treat me a certain way because I am artist. So when I can benefit from their version what they think I am.
You should 100% manipulate people, but but if you want to get something done, you got to do away with the idea of inspiration for the first thing for sure. Right? There's this great line by, it's a French writer. I'm not going to try to guess his name, but the line is that, be calm in your life so you can be chaotic in your work.
I know this. Yeah.
So, I'm going to say Maupassant or one of those. Anyway, Balzac, maybe.
Mapadha.
So anyway, the point is,
bad jokes.
Do away with your inspiration wala hang up. वो नहीं होने वाला है तेरे को काम पे. And the weird thing is, the minute you start work, it happens, dude. It just happens. So trust that process. That's one. And the second thing about it is that it teaches you respect. Like that's one of the good things about writing in these very formalized environments, is that it teaches you respect for other people, which is not really something that you learn as a novelist or as a stand-up comedian, and especially not as a stand-up comedian. So I had this line which is that there are a lot of professional stand-up comics, but there are very few stand-up comics who are professional. Right?
Yeah, it's true.
So, and that's the thing. So when you're writing for a TV show, right? What I mean by respect is there are hundreds and hundreds of people whose jobs and livelihoods depend on you delivering that script on time.
Yeah.
There's a guy waiting on to create a set, and he
Yeah.
can't do it because your
The script
lazy
is-
ass
yeah.
hasn't submitted that script.
Yeah.
There are actors who need to rehearse who can't do it because your lazy
Yeah.
ass didn't do it. And
शॉर्ट ब्रेकडाउन नहीं हो रहे, क्या नहीं
कुछ
हो
नहीं हो रहा है, dude,
कुछ
सब
नहीं हो
रुका है
रहा
क्योंकि
हाँ.
तू बोल रहा है कि नहीं, मेरे दिल में वो एहसास नहीं जग रहा है. Like चुतिया, तू लिख and then भेज. And the beauty of writing, I think, or anything, is the idea of drafts is a life changer, right? It's a beautiful thing, the idea of drafts. As a writer, you have zero resources that are costing you money,
Yeah.
right? So a painter, if they do a bad job, they have to scrape it off, and then it costs them money to buy paints and then do it again.
Yeah.
As a writer, it's zero cost. So keep scraping the words
Yeah.
and putting them back, scraping the words, putting them back. Who gives a fuck? The only thing you're losing is time.
Yeah.
So the more you work in drafts, the better your thing gets. And I think the last thing to say about this is the idea of getting rid of perfection. It's not going to be perfect. It never is. It never will be. Okay. There is the best that you can hope for in a collaboration is that other people pick up the genius in their departments, and
Right.
the sum is greater than the parts.
Right.
That's the real joy of collaboration. When you really collaborate with something good, it's always better than what you could do individually. But perfection ka the flaw is that there's a loss of transmission. You have an idea, it's beautiful in your head, it's perfect. When you start writing it down, 10% of it disappears.
Yeah.
When you do a second draft, about like another 5% gets shaved off.
Yeah.
Then it goes to an actor who may not understand what you're doing, and then another.
Yeah.
So by the time it goes up on screen, the worst outcome is that it's down to 10% of what you actually had.
Yeah.
That's the worst aspect. The best aspect is you come up with something, there's a loss of transmission, theek hai. But the actor has interpreted in a way that you didn't even know. So you've gained that 30% or whatever. So then it just adds up.
Yeah.
So get rid of perfection, because you're never going to be as good as you are in your head. Right? So be shitty, but be shitty in draft. So the shittiness gets
Reduced.
mitigated
Yeah.
over time. So I think those are the things that and I think that makes you, that's the one good thing about doing these formal gigs. You get a sense of this thing that we don't intrinsically have, which is work ethic.
Yeah.
When things are on the line and there are deadlines to be met, you gotta fucking do the job and you gotta do it. That's what it is. So
yeah, that's one thing I realized when I started making the podcasts.
right, exactly.
When it has to go out every week. With stand-up, you have that laziness. Especially I to get lazy because I'm like, इतना सारा घंटा पड़ा है, क्यों लिखूं नया and all of that. Especially जब quarantine में open mic नहीं हो रहे थे, live वाले. It's very easy to fall out of that habit.
Oh, dude, 9 out of 10 comics will write their joke like 2 hours before the show. And 2 hours is like the ones who are hardworking. Correct. And the rest will like literally like every show is the place where you're writing. And that's the hard part. It's like we're constantly living like we're students giving a board exam. कि वो दिन के पहले हम पढ़ेंगे और फिर करेंगे.
I think it's also just the fact that like in my personal experience, I realized that if I sit and write a joke and go, it's going to be detrimental to the joke. As opposed to if I educate myself about the joke and everything around the joke and then go on stage and then try to make the joke.
It's better for you?
Yeah, because with just an understanding, a general understanding of, because humor for me is defense mechanism. Right. So let me put myself in a situation where I feel like, oh fuck,
you're in trouble.
I'm in trouble. If I don't do it, I will die. And then
for me, I had a very interesting sort of like transition. So I started off, and oh dude, I have to tell you this. So I hard drive clear kar raha tha, and I saw some really old footage, dude, from back in the back, like when Hive was like still around and all of that stuff, right? So a video tha, dude, and I saw it and I was like, man, this is fucking terrible, right? Like it's all over rehearsed. The lines are all like lines.
chalky.
right? And you're, like when you do crowd interaction with the aim of like doing your joke right after, that shitty, hey, so who watches porn, what about you? What about you? Okay, my joke is now. So
the worst is when nobody, like, any cricket fans here, and then nobody's a cricket fan,
Yeah.
and now
I am a cricket fan.
Yeah, I am a cricket-
So I saw that shit and I was like, man, this is fucking terrible. And that's what
Yeah.
it was like from when you begin, right? And so earlier I used to be a extremely written comedian, written to the point where I would write pauses.
Oh, I
Like
remember.
Neville used to make fun of me because he read one script of mine and usme likha tha, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. He's like, what the who the fuck writes good evening, ladies and gentlemen, you dumb fuck, right? And I was like, dude, you have to write everything, you have to be prepared.
Hey, but that's the one thing I write whenever I write down a set list.
Yeah, that's the first thing you do.
That's the first thing I write still, because
Great.
otherwise I will forget.
Great, I'm so glad, dude. I'm so fucking glad.
I don't write any of my jokes down,
Pop.
but I always write hi or good evening at the beginning at the top.
Thank
I
you so
remember.
much. That's my time.
Yeah.
So exactly, dude. Like, तो पहले मैं वो करता था. Then I started the whole of Anatomy of Awkward. I don't know how I did it, but I think and it was a very conscious decision. But I said, "Okay, I'm not going to write a single word of this." And since then, now it's like now I've come to a hybrid, like half write, half improvise wala scene. And I think it's yeah. You got to find, like, what I found is that there are some lines that will always evade you on stage, and they're the more like just the you just have to like really think about a bit to get to that place.
Yeah.
And for me, I can't do that on stage, so I prefer that. Like,
Oh, you do the thinking off stage, then you leave it to your subconscious to make the joke, and then
Nee, so,
once you go on stage,
like I have an appreciation for like just certain words in order. Like, for example, I like this one line I've got in a bit, okay, where I talk about like we're living in history in our pajamas right now, and the pajamas are an incredibly deceptive piece of clothing because that motherly elastic band never lets you know that you're getting fat.
right?
Right?
Now,
It's always
see,
like, "Arey, tum to healthy ho, khao."
that's something that I can never do,
Right? Why? Like,
because
but you see what I'm saying about like I
because
don't
that
think
formulation requires you to sit at home or not be on stage when you formulate that sentence.
that's what I mean. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I mean.
I
Like,
would say the same sentence in half the words,
right.
because I'm in the moment trying to get to that joke.
Right.
I'd say,
At least with your stand-up, the live stuff I've seen is that you will the thing about live, and I see what you mean, that it forces you to just get them no matter how, right? So you will be more performing, you will do whatever it takes.
yeah, which
to
is where the
fucking-
absurdity helps.
That's
so
where the
much.
absurdity helps. And that's the thing. So for me, I find it very like I love this. For me, it's my favorite joke, and it's not even the greatest joke of all time, but I really like this
But it's,
motherly
there's
elastic band.
there's such a nice truth to it.
And it forms the exact image that I want in my
Yeah.
head. So I enjoy that kind of thing.
You will
And
love
उसके लिए मेरे को
chill
writing
hop.
चाहिए.
Yeah, that is true. That makes sense. You will love chill hop music, I feel.
Chill hop music, yes, I will. I do.
Yeah, because that's why I love chill hop music. Because I also get obsessed with small pieces of jazz licks, and
Yeah.
that's what chill hop is. Somebody got obsessed with one piece of piano, and then they
And
were
they
just
just
like,
kept-
loop it for 3 minutes. Let's just keep
Nice.
change the beats. But hey, man, I think that's all the questions I had for you.
Fuck. This is very breezy and nice, dude.
है ना?
Yeah.
You didn't even pass any of them. Sometimes people pass the question.
Really?
Yeah. For whatever reasons. For
Please tell me
legal or-
off camera.
I will tell you off camera. I shall tell you off all
So
the things.
to conclude this episode,
Yeah.
I have this relative who is now deceased. Hey, if we set it up, we have to give it. It's due.
You don't talk about death nearly enough in your set.
Yeah, because I mean, touch wood. Like, I don't have.
A lot of dead relatives that you were close to.
Yeah, and like, yeah. I mean, I don't. It's not like touched me in the visceral way that it has a lot of people, and I think like that's you can't fake it. You can't just be like, I
can't
need
fake
to.
it,
I need to talk
But
about
it's
this.
interesting to me because. Okay, don't take this the wrong way.
Yeah.
but like बहुत लोग का style ना घमासान होता है.
हाँ.
Like the reality they're describing is a virulent, I think is the correct word here. So it's tumultuous, it's crazy, it's chaotic, it's bare, it's not necessarily appealing, and then the fun comes out in making the unappealing appealing and palatable for the audience. With your stuff, it's not that you're taking unappealing things and making them more palatable. You're taking subtle things and making them more apparent. Like the you know the guy wala bit. You know the guy, the cool guy, from Anatomy. You know the cool guy, the cool guy at the bar. He's the guy, right? And like now, you know, in my in my treatment of the same scenario, I also noticed the guy, but in my head, my brain, I wanna kill him. And I would rather spend 3 minutes on killing him. But you will actually dissect the frustration that is coming of not being the guy.
Yeah. No, and I think you're absolutely right. You're bang on about that, because for me, my whole thing of comedy, and when people ask me what is the best thing about it, the best thing about it for me is that I get to channelize my frustrations. Like, you don't get to do that in your life and your job. I get to do that.
Yeah.
In your job as a coder, there are hundreds of things that go wrong in your life, as do with everybody else. But you don't get to articulate them and make other people laugh.
Yeah.
And I get to do that. And that's the greatest joy of it. It's not anything else. It's just that, यार, मेरे को बीच हॉलिडे पे मजा ही नहीं आया, और फिर मैं तेरे को बताऊंगा अभी क्यों नहीं आया. No, but that is true. Also, what is true is that for me, the fun of it is also in understanding why the thing is the way it is.
Like, yeah. In trying to break down.
And the other thing is that I've realized that if there's one theme so far in my life, it is that all of it is autobiographical. Like, a lot of it is. And
one's own life does tend to be autobiographical to oneself.
Yeah, but like a lot of comics will veer away from it, right? They'll be like, I want to talk about issues, or I want to talk about happenings and news.
Which I think is silly, because I feel like if you are personal enough, then issues will come out. And if you're genuinely interested in issues, then personal reasons for that will come out. Like, it's an endless cycle, you know?
Yeah, and I know, but I think I've also, like, which is what I think the one thing that I've realized is that everything has its own space. And the beauty of it is that do that thing, because that's a different perspective.
Yeah.
Like, fuck it, just do whatever the thing that you particularly, the distinction I make is not of genre or anything. It is just of how it's about all your job as an artist is to hone your perspective until it's entirely your perspective. Right? Is to shave off all the influences and all the stuff that's come before you and all the things that you imagine people will like, and just do the thing that you want to do. Right?
So just make drafts.
Just make drafts. Exactly. First draft is going to be Robin Williams via Virdas, and then and then you find yourself at the end of that line.
Hey, I hope you do, man.
Yeah, no, and that's the only thing, right? Like, with every successive bit, that's your only aim.
Yeah, just to get better.
Just to get better.
Thanks, man. What a beautiful, wonderful, soft, nice note. See, without any dead relatives.
Not even one.
Heartstrings have been plucked. But yeah, man, that's it there. Thank you so much for being on this episode, man.
Too much fun. It was so breezy and amazing. Great.
That's the idea, fun. Bro. But hey, this podcast is sponsored by, or rather supported by patrons. So, if it's still around, it's because of patrons. By the way, if you're listening to this and you're not a patron and you want to help us, there is an InstaMojo link in the description. You can just give whatever money you want to give there. We shut patrons for the last 10 episodes because abhi main kahan naya patron ko add karu ek mahine ke liye. But you can just support us there. You'll still get all the perks that all the patrons get. And there's a minimum amount and also you can see, देख लेना सब, ठीक है. And अगले एपिसोड अगले हफ्ते, और बाकी सब तो चलता रहता है. और बस इतना ही है, यही है आकाश एंड फ्रेंड्स पॉडकास्ट. हर हफ्ते किसी और को पकड़ के उसके 2 घंटे बिगाड़ते हैं. आज का तुक्का बिगाड़ा है, और अगले हफ्ते किसी और का बिगाड़ेंगे. Thank you so much for watching, you guys. My name is Akash. Take care of yourself. Okay, bye.